Hey, 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 welcome back to Trek Chat, a podcast brought to you by Trek on the Tube. I am your usual host, Sean, Toddy, Trek on the Tube, whatever the hell you want to call me. I am joined today by two magnificent guests. One is a first timer, and one is, he's a classic. He's a veteran.
I like classic.
You like a classic?
Yes.
He's a classic. Let's talk about our youthful new guest, however. Right up, we've got EarlGrayTrekkie. Robbie, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Glad to be on your podcast because I've listened to quite a lot of them, and they're so great to just listen to. Like I listen to Star Trek podcasts all the time, so it's great to have your podcast to listen to as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I don't put out as many as I should. I only do once a month, which is ridiculous when you think about it. There's only like 12 episodes a year, but still, I do what I can. Starfleet boy, the Star Trek 5 lover. What is it? Fuck yeah, Star Trek 5.
Yeah, go check it. If you guys are curious, check out the hashtag fuck yeah Star Trek 5 with a V instead of a 5. And you'll see all my loving tweets actually about the movie. I posted a lot. There's it was fun actually. There's a lot of interaction, lots of people lots of people telling me how much they hate Star Trek 5, which is fine. But there are also a lot of people saying that the movie's underappreciated, and so I agree with that.
I find both opinions valid. Actually, I can see that. I can see why people hate it, but
it exists in like a quantum state for you. It's like it's like both at the same time.
Like every time I want to hate on a movie, I think of Cyborg, and I'm like, but yeah, I like Cyborg. So.
He's the winner of that movie. That, and also I feel like I feel like that's the reason, like when you're like, oh, I need to cut something out, you can't cut out Star Trek 5 because of Cyborg.
No.
You can cut out Star Trek Into Darkness, but you can't cut out Star Trek 5.
Also, he gives precedent to like Michael Burnham, right? Like the whole pop-up random sibling that
not only that, there's like
Spock
moments
never talked about.
I feel like when I watch it now, I know we're not supposed to be talking about Star Trek 5, but thank you for indulging me for a bit. But I feel like when I'm watching it now, I can't help but think of the Discovery era, and there's all kinds of things like in the Q&A Trek shorts. There's a moment where he lifts number one up on his shoulders, and he does the same thing again with Jim in the brig. So I don't know. There's just these cool visual parallels, and so I can't help but think like, is Spock remembering the past when he's doing all these things in the future? Like, he does say in the movie, I don't often think of the past. Also, by the way, I'm now an expert on all the lines.
Oh, that's because the past is too painful for him.
It is. I know. See, look, is this going to turn into a Star Trek?
He thinks of like Burnham. He's like, oh my god, I can't think of this.
Because there's that moment where
he will become too human if he thinks of his past.
Well, that's what Sarek says to. It's awful when the baby's born. He looks at the baby and he's like so human, and he just like hands it back.
I do think William Shatner directed it well.
Yay!
There is a lot of energy in the characters in that film, and it's a lot of fun. Like it gets the TOS vibe very well, even if it's a bit of a rubbish film. Like it starts well, and then it just it dips as you go along until you're deep down.
Yeah, I think it's a film that means well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it has heart.
But I think it deserves a 4K restoration and a director's cut.
I'm not sure of that. Like, I think a director's cut. You want to bring William Shatner back into the editing bay.
I want it.
I have him do some behind the scenes on why she made this film and why it ended the Star Trek films for however many years.
Is there a director's commentary cut of like Star Trek 5 with like Shatner
There has
explaining?
To be on my. I'm sure I have it on my Blu-ray. I'm sure I have him. Yeah, I think there is a commentary on it. Actually, I've heard it before.
We are not talking about this though.
No, but thank you for letting me promote Fuck Yeah Star Trek 5. Thank you. That was really awesome.
I don't know if Robbie remembers this topic because we couldn't remember it until we brought it up I think yesterday. But yes. I think it's a good one.
We're talking about Strange New Worlds Kirk, Carpet, and Klingons. I don't remember the Klingons part.
Technically, it's like Strange New Worlds Carpets. It's Strange New World Kirk.
Right.
It's Star Trek Picard Carpets, and then it's Discovery Klingons. So
that's what it
Kirk,
was.
Carpet, and Klingons.
It's a really good.
That's the topic.
It's a really good title, man.
Robbie, do you have any thoughts on Kirk for starters? Because I feel like you have some hot takes on that.
Yeah, I think when Strange New Worlds was announced, I was so excited to see Pike because Anson Mount is so charismatic and so endearing as Pike, and then to just to see the photos of Kirk already for season 2 just kind of shocked me in a bad way, and I was like, oh no, this is a time travel, and what else are we going to have in this show in season 2? But Anson Mount has said that it's not going to be Kirk taking over. Pike's going to be the captain still. Kirk's probably just going to be some fan service, but I think it would have been better to leave Kirk until, maybe the last season, because it can be so easy to dip into these characters, Spock and Kirk and Bones and Scotty. Who knows if we'll even see those characters? It's so easy to dip into that, dip into those characters when we have this new character who doesn't have a lot of history that we know of, and let's flesh him out. Let's give him a legendary status like Kirk.
I agree. I was a bit troubled when they announced Kirk. And it's not that I don't want to see Kirk, and I had already wrapped my head around the fact that we were going to see him. I don't think there was even a possibility of making a Strange New Worlds without having Kirk appear on screen at some time. But I had kind of I guess, built up this fantasy that he would be in the final season or the final. This is a podcast; you can show things to your camera, but only we will see them.
I know. I'm only showing it.
He's
for
doing
you
it for us.
I was doing it for you guys. You didn't have to comment on it and break the fourth wall.
I'm sorry. No, I think that it made sense for them to bring Kirk in, but I was expecting to see him in the last season. I was already a little confused as to why they were bringing back so many characters that we'd already seen. Uhura, Dr. Mbenga, all of that. They're bringing characters back, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, and they might handle them very well, but I was already a little okay, I wanted this to be not the new TOS. I wanted it to be Strange New Worlds. So to have Kirk announced so early was a little troubling to me. What do you think? You love it though. You're all about it, right?
I was predicting it when you guys were getting angry at me on the TOS discussions. Everyone, I would say, "Oh, Kirk's gonna be in Strange New Worlds," and people would be like, "Oh, I'm so mad at you." No, Ian, especially our friend Ian, he was like, "No," and Robbie, and also Fathery. Hey, I get where you're coming from completely, and I actually agree. But I think I was being a realist about it. I was like, "There's no way, that they're gonna leave out Kirk." I didn't think they would do it in season 2. And I also, I have to say, on the whole, I think the folks running Star Trek do a great job, but I'm a little confused why they would release that information when season 1 hasn't even started.
It was leaked.
I know, but still, let the leak happen and just don't say anything. Who's the? A lot of people were speculating it was another captain.
You want to pull a Spider-Man thing?
What's that? Yeah.
Pretend
people
it's not true.
Pretend it, not even, or just don't comment on it. Remember, people were speculating that it could have been another captain. There was a whole lot of just let that speculation keep going, baby, until season 2, and then it's Kirk. It's Kirk. But I guess that's all right. Whatever. But it feels the same to me. I'm just to switch over to another show real quick, but midway through Star Trek Picard season 2, we get an announcement about the cast returning in season 3, and I have to say that it kind of hurt the excitement of season 2 for me a little bit, because all I can think about is how is this going to tie into season 3? It's very distracting. So I don't know. I don't get it. Personally, I would have waited on both of those things till a lot later, but whatever the reason is, they did it, and so that's what it is. I think it also, one of the benefits of both situations, I think, is that people get to talk about it and get it out of their system, so that when it comes out, you're not hot on your takes. Your takes have cooled down a little bit, and then you can accept it a little differently, so to speak. But yeah, I'm excited about Kirk being in the mix. I do worry about canon, even though I'm very actively like kind of pushing against canon people all the time online. But I do actually respect it, I believe it or not. And so there are certain things that I would like to see the way that Kirk is handled. I would like to see it done that way, but I'm trying to just like, let go of my expectations and go with the flow. I think Kirk and Pike will meet before they're quote unquote supposed to, and we'll just, I think it'll just work out fine. But yeah, I feel like there was a lot of I just think that like it's distracting from Pike, which is what the show's about. Like, like I agree with both of you on that point. That being said, as of this podcast, we're only like what, 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks, May 5th.
Really?
Here in North America, and Robbie will get it through Subspace, I'm sure.
I want to see Strange New Worlds, but postpone that shit till Better Call Saul's done. Right? Let's let Better Call Saul finish its run, and then release Strange New Worlds.
You guys I'm only on Breaking Bad, so I haven't like actually.
You could have started with Better Call Saul.
Oh, I'm trying to get him through Breaking Bad, but
yeah, I'm almost done.
Yeah.
Almost done. We're on the final stretch, but then I'll go to Better. That's what I should do next, right?
I think it's I think it's the better show, but then like maybe a lot of Breaking Bad fans would kind of maybe fight me on that. But
is it like a chicken or an egg though? You can't have Breaking Bad, or you can't have Better Call Saul without Breaking Bad, though. I feel like.
Well, yeah, I guess in the same way, like yeah, I guess so.
Is the show set up so that like when you start, if you watch Better Call Saul first, do you miss anything? Like, is it? I
think they've handled it.
We stopped talking about Star Trek.
This is a very small tangent, but I think the way they've handled Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad is the same way they handled The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Like the way they've fashioned both stories, you can now watch them in whichever order you want. Like you can watch Lord of the Rings, and then at the end he's writing like a book, and it's about he's writing the book about The Hobbit. But like if you watch The Hobbit first, I don't know, they have like the scene from The Lord of the Rings and like they've crafted it so that you can watch in whichever order you want. I feel like Better Call Saul is kind of conceived the same way. You're getting scenes from Breaking Bad technically in like, or that happened post Breaking Bad in Better Call Saul. So it's very interwoven, right?
Well, I love Breaking Bad. It's very phenomenal. I could see how like TV after it was inspired by it. There's a lot of cool things that it does.
What I will say about canon is I've been curious I've been curious with Strange New Worlds. We saw, of course, number one, Una's teaser, and like there was a sequence where I forget, but like her eyes or her hands are kind of glowing red, and I get the worry, like, is number one going to turn out to be some half alien character or something, or maybe it's just like some TOS weirdness for the week that they put in a teaser there. But I hope they don't pull any I don't know, like number one is half Romulan, or I don't know, like I'm not saying they would do that kind of thing. And then I also think that Strange New Worlds is very, so far from what we're seeing, the fact that they've chosen Uhura and M'Benga to be main characters, I think that's a good choice, because to be honest, Uhura was very underutilized in TOS, as great as a character she is. So to give her backstory and to flesh out her character is a good choice, more than someone like, Bones or Scotty. And then also M'Benga is even better because we only saw him in 2 episodes.
By the way, another kudos to Star Trek V. It feels like Uhura got a lot more to do in Star Trek V than in any of the other Star Trek TOS films. She was a real star in it. Like, she has a lot of moments. So, and also Chekhov too. Walter Koenig got highlights. So whatever you say about William Shatner, or maybe he was forced to do it by Harv Bennett, but they got like their moments to shine a lot more than in the other movies. I don't think that Una, personally, I don't think that Una is gonna be like revealed to be like especially not a Romulan, because I guess at this point we don't really know what Romulans look like if you stick to the TOS, the events established in TOS, then we won't know what they look like, or that yeah, and I feel like Spock is like a rare exception in like the cross species relationships at this point as well. Like it doesn't seem like there's a lot of mixing between species going on in the TOS era. We finally get it in Disco, though. I love that President, what's her name? Rillick, thank you. That she's a mix of three different, like her heritage spans, like I think it was three different species, right? Human, Bajoran, and Cardassian. So she's like the product of lots of different mixed relationships. So I do think that that's fine, but I think that scene particular, Robbie, is going to be TOS style, uh, shenanigans of like someone gets powers or something like that. Like I think that's what that is. Like
it's a Gary Mitchell situation.
Yeah, like or something along those lines. Like Troy having a baby from an alien, or like it could just be that she's infected with some kind of alien presence or something like that, or she has like temporary powers or something like that, but who knows? Or she could have, maybe she got injected by the whatever the Vulcan extremists use, and it's like
that thing. I remember that thing.
Yeah, and
he did
they start glowing red or something like that before they
explode
or something like that. Yeah, so it could be a dream sequence too. You never know, right? Like people have nightmares in TOS. No, I mean in Star Trek in general. So.
Honestly, I think they're going to be able. I think they're going to handle canon quite well, which is surprising for me to say. I mean, apart from all of the aesthetics, like the generally speaking, the ship, that kind of stuff. Like I suppose people like me have to kind of just accept that shit looks different, yo. Some things will look impeccably.
You didn't already go through that catharsis with Discovery, though, Sean? Like, I feel like we're all over it by this point. You know what I mean? Like, it's like
no,
we know that
it's not because the change to the YouTube layout happened, 7 years ago now, that it still doesn't look like shit. Like I don't complain about it every day, but YouTube is still like unuser friendly, and it's the same thing for me for Star Trek. Like Discovery.
That's an interesting way of putting it that I've never heard before. Like the user interface for you has changed. I think that's neat. Like I hadn't thought of it that way. That's interesting.
So I don't like it. It's not because I stopped complaining about it that I've now accepted it. I still don't.
You liked your Windows and now it's on Mac.
Yeah, I guess.
I think I think the only thing that annoys me about the Enterprise and Strange New Worlds is the transporter and the hallways, because I don't like that extremely white kind of look.
Well, I don't like engineering. I think it just looks it makes no sense that it's like that big and that, and then people will tell me, oh, but they've got the slanted thing, so it's the same. It's like, oh yeah, they got a slanted thing, so it's the same. It's like I can't like your house and my house are not the same because they both have chairs, right? It's anyway. I no longer. But when it comes to characters, like this is the aesthetics. When it comes to characters and that kind of stuff, I do think they will handle it with like at least the same tact as Enterprise did. Like they put the Ferengi in Enterprise. Technically, they never should have been in there. That kind of like you could debate all you want about like the canonicity of having Ferengi in Enterprise, but at the end of the day, what they did is they bent canon, right? They like kind of went around it and managed to say that like humans or Archer's crew, they didn't know who the Ferengi were. They were never formally introduced, that kind of stuff. So I feel like maybe they'll do something similar with Kirk. Like maybe Pike will be off the ship before Kirk arrives on it. Kirk will be this spry young lad that they're going to have to just like captain the Enterprise for like a couple weeks while Pike is like off doing something important, and then they'll take Kirk off before Pike comes back. Maybe they won't even meet.
Going into prediction and spoiler territory, I think you're right, but I also think that the character Ortegas has a past history with Kirk, because and so maybe we won't even see the Enterprise. Maybe Kirk is commanding or temporarily commanding another ship, because he has his other badge on. Like he has like a different style badge.
For the promotional picture, they put a Delta on him, but
They
I think
did put
that's
a Delta.
I think that's a fake though.
Yeah,
Like, I
well, not a
think they
fake, but that's
just
a promotional. Yeah, it's just promotional. Like they just
in
did
my
whatever.
mind, the timeline, like what happened is a bunch of Vampire Diaries tweens were out in the street and they saw their favorite actor, and
Yeah,
they're like, "Oh my
100%
god, he's in
was
a
what
new
happened.
show!"
Yeah,
So they reddited their favorite actor on a new show, and then people picked up on it. And they're like, "Oh, he's in Star Trek." And then so everyone on the production crew like freaked out. They're like, "How do we keep the secret? You know
right.
what? Let's just." They basically dragged him over to the set. Like they were inside, they dragged him outside, they dragged him inside, put him on the chair, and then took a high-res picture and slapped a badge on. They're like, "Oh, we got to change the badge so that people don't know like what station he's working on or whatever."
Right. By the way,
That's what happened in my mind.
The Vampire Diaries actor you're talking about is Paul Wesley, and yeah, he's definitely from the Vampire Diaries. That's all I knew him from, actually, as a matter of fact.
He's very well cast. I can't be mad at the casting. I think he's impeccably cast. I think he looks the part.
I wanted
100%.
someone else. I wanted another tween heartthrob, the guy who plays Archie on KJ Apa.
Oh,
I thought he would have made a great Kirk.
He's from New Zealand.
Yeah, I
Isn't he?
know. Yeah, KJ Apa. You New Zealanders, you produce some pretty handsome dudes. Let me just say,
Some handsome lads.
I
prefer the current Kirk that we have. Like KJ Apa. He's not my Kirk.
He's not not your Kirk. Yeah, so
No.
yeah, I'm fine with Paul Wesley being Kirk. I think he's a little too old though. I know I hate to be an ageist here, but I think that Kirk of this era should be just like a hair younger, like a little bit younger looking, but whatever, it's fine. Because he's like 30 something when he gets the Enterprise, right?
Well, isn't he like Shatner's age at the time of like filming? Isn't that how?
No, but the character. How old is Kirk in TOS? Let's see. Google will tell us. 32 years old. So he's 32 years old at the beginning of TOS. So I imagine, so like that's the age that this guy looks to me. Paul Wesley. Like
well, he's 39.
Yeah, so there you go. Okay, so he's playing really young because he's supposed to be playing someone in his 20s. That being said, Starfleet Boy is 43, and on camera, I look like I could be in my 30s.
Yeah, he looks like he's 18, right?
So, yeah. so therefore...
I think Strange New Worlds, I am going to be glad to see what seems to be like a series that's really going to connect the canon, because Star Trek Enterprise was a prequel, and it didn't. I think because Rick Berman and Brannon Braga weren't so much TOS fans, or they didn't really grow up with TOS, they didn't make the connections as much. Which I think you really have to get a balance when you're making a prequel of lining up the dots and having the fan service, but not going too far. And I think it's great that we'll be going back to, some more canon connections like Enterprise Season 4 had with these kind of characters like Spock and him being on Vulcan, Amok time style. But also, I really, really hope that we see an Enterprise character show up on Strange New Worlds.
I know, that's my dream.
Especially because
my dream for you, yeah.
Especially because Jolene Blaylock showed up to the what was it, the Star Trek Day event, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that T'Pol? You want T'Pol back, right?
Well, not Why particularly. Not? T'Pol or Phlox is probably the most realistic.
Oh, is Phlox long-lived as well? Are the Denobulans also long-lived? Have them both come back. What? Dr. Phlox and Dr. Mbenga. Can you imagine a little, like an episode where he needs Phlox first? They're trying to figure something out. What's a good one? What was Phlox?
So wait a minute, when is Strange New Worlds taking place? Because I had it in my mind. I had it between Discovery and TOS.
That is correct.
Okay.
It's post the events of Disco going to the to the future.
Okay.
So it takes place right. Basically, the epilogue to Discovery season 2 could be the pre it could be the setup for Strange New Worlds. In
So
fact,
basically,
I think
what
it was
happens
meant...
is Pike is out on like a mission of some kind while the events of Discovery are happening. So that's why he missed the war.
Right. So
But he
actually,
came
Admiral
back
Cornwall
and then
sidelined him on purpose. She sent Enterprise off on a extended mission, like a deep space mission, to sideline them on purpose, because her reasoning was, if the Federation fell, they needed people outside of the war to basically save humanity. It was like a last ditch effort. So like that, imagine that, like it would have been like kind of like, I know you guys haven't seen Battlestar Galactica, but that's the basic premise of Battlestar Galactica. And apparently we're finding out that I don't know how true this is, but I've been seeing some chatter that Battlestar Galactica was created based on like rejected Voyager concepts, which like really makes me happy, because Voyager could have been Battlestar Galactica. It would have been amazing. But anyways, the point is to sideline a ship so that if all else fails, these are our last resorts, and they're they're outside of the war, so they're safe in a way. So maybe it's to carry on the Federation in some small way, aboard a ship that becomes like a generational ship or something like that. So but going back to what you were saying, Sean, like, so again, these are kind of spoilers and kind of not spoilers, but like we've heard that like Pike's kind of given himself like a break, or like he's kind of like on a self-imposed kind of like hiatus, and he's being recalled back to Starfleet. So that's what happened.
Like the synopsis for like episode 1, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So he's been, and it makes sense. Like he went through a lot in season 2 of Discovery. Like imagine, like, so he just needs. I mean, like he like saw his future, he saw his face melting, all that stuff. So I kind of understand it, and I like that the show is picking up at that point.
I think
that's the case.
There's a really good opportunity for what could be a really miserable storyline of Pike kind of, not that it would be a bad storyline, Pike dealing with that trauma, but I think Strange New Worlds, for me, I want it to be the optimistic show that doesn't have too much character development, but doesn't have things that, string out over episodes. However, I do think that could be really interesting to see him kind of tell Spock how he's feeling, and maybe, see how their relationship forms, why he is so loyal to Pike in the menagerie.
I think we will. Yeah, I love that.
It's really great ground to cover. And I hope that Pike I hope that it would be really triumphant, really beautiful if Pike has this trauma, is struggling with it, and then he just kind of rises above it, he seems like that kind of captain to me.
Yeah, I agree. That would be good. I don't want something like the book Trauma, like him losing his entire planet and then having to deal with that for the entire season. I don't think
his planet's Earth, so you're safe.
No, but I don't think we'd necessarily need that, like in Strange New Worlds. We already have technically like the weight of what will happen to Pike ultimately.
Yeah,
like to deal with. I guess the grander question, which isn't so much. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think we'll see Pike have his accident on during the show, like at the end of the show? Will that be a thing? Like, or
I wouldn't expect to.
Or does that overlap? It overlaps, I guess, with TOS. I guess the accident happened like.
Yeah, that's like during TOS.
Yeah. Okay, that makes. I think so. I don't know. I'm not
Alex
as good.
Kurtzman
You're the timeline guy.
Seems to think that that Pike dies.
What's that?
Alex Kurtzman seems to think that Pike dies.
Did he say that in an interview?
The way he speaks of it, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
He probably has no clue.
No, come on, guys.
Boy doesn't know. It's fine. He's allowed to not know and then be able to deal with like the business just aspect
like through his phone. He was listening to this and he's like. They just
quick.
They don't understand
me. He picked up his phone. He's like, he doesn't die.
We need to rewrite the finale, guys.
Oh no!
By the way, you guys, this Trek Chat, if I'm not mistaken, unless you have another one before it launches May 1st, so it's like 5 days from when people are listening to this, Strange New Worlds will come out. So we'll get to find out how right we are. Yeah.
I was gonna say the grand scheme. I suppose the bigger question isn't so much Kirk specific. It's like, how do you guys feel about having so many legacy characters come back in like TOS, and then we can transition into like Picard as well. Like I think everyone's happy about the TNG reunion, but like they're bringing back. Not only are they bringing back legacy characters in TOS, but they're also bringing back like they're introducing new characters that are connected to legacy characters. You know, like the Noonien Singh, that kind of stuff. Like, are you guys comfortable with them doing that? Because I would prefer them to do their own thing. Like, and I'm sure they'll be able to handle them well. Pike was very well handled. In Discovery, I'm just quite convinced that it would be nice to have a show that is completely unique and completely new at some point.
I think I understand where you're coming from on that. And there was a time where, and I still yearn for that show. Like, to me, in my mind, it's the next show set aboard the next Enterprise with the next captain of the Enterprise. But it doesn't have to be like that. It could be the next Voyager. It could be the next Deep Space Nine. I just want to have that. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, so not my expectation, my hope is that it's a new Enterprise F or whatever, or go a few letters further in the alphabet if you want to, and take us like what the D did, right? Like we jumped from A to D. It's okay to go to we don't want to go to J though. I don't want to see any J shit at all. Like, that's too far. Stay away from J. Please. Sorry.
Maybe they'll do like contemporary,
But,
like modern day tech companies where they just change the branding all of a sudden. They call it like the Enterprise One.
The Enterprise One. The NX. You could call her the one. Anyways, but as far as legacy characters coming back, like, it's not what I had kind of envisioned for Star Trek. Like, I definitely envisioned that next show with the next thing, I mean, like, going further, kind of like what TNG did until Spock returns and Scotty. You don't really get a lot. Well, I mean, you get McCoy handing it off in the first episode, but it held on into its own. Like, it was very much its own show. So I would like to see that, like, I'm used to that, and that's what I kind of like expected. But that being said, as I have grown, fonder and fonder of these characters, especially the TNG characters, personally, I'm like, yeah, bring it on. Like, I want all the characters. Like, and it actually, in that situation, it delights me immensely to have, like, I hope to see Barkley. I hope to see Kira. No, I'm not even joking. Like, I feel like over 10 episodes, it wouldn't feel as forced as if they did it in a movie, a 2-hour movie. So even if it's just like 5 seconds or 20 minutes, I mean, 30 seconds or a minute cameo, which I think, it would be good if. And I do think there's ways that it could serve the story. If you're in a Starfleet setting, if you're full Starfleet, which is apparently what season 3 is going to be, you have all the Starfleet, like, that you can call Esri, who knows who you need, right? Like, in what situation, like, there's all kinds of reasons to that you could work in that are plausible, where it's not as whatever. But as far as the TOS thing goes, I do want them to be more like, I'd like to leave the mystery there as much as possible, like, as far as these characters, because even though it is cool to get more Kirk and Spock, I love getting more Kirk, and Spock, but, like, what really excites me is getting more Uhura. Like, I think Robbie said this earlier, that, like, that's exciting because that's a character that is just, we as fans have given her so much, but there's not a lot on screen, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think that would be wonderful. So I do like it when they do it with underutilized characters. Nurse Chapel, for example, is another great example. Like, she's a completely underutilized character in TOS as well. We get glimpses of her interest in Spock and things like that, but not much else. So I love that they're doing it with those characters. Not, and of course, Toddy will get happy for a moment here, but then I'll make you sad again. Spock is, like, the most told about character. Like, there are things we can learn about Spock, and again, I think I'm on EarlGrayTrekkie's, Robbie's camp on this, which is, I think the interest for me would be how, the loyalty that develops between him and Pike, right? And then maybe just like again, maybe I don't even want Spock to meet Kirk. in that episode, whatever, in season 2, because I kind of like this idea that Father and I came up with a little bit, which is, that like whatever the ending is of Strange New Worlds leads right into that opening where they're playing chess with each other in Star Trek the original series. So it's like kind of a thing like that, like that would be really, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I have to find the exact words, but I don't think we're gonna get that, but that's okay. So but again, spend more time with the characters that we didn't get to know in TOS. I'm happy about that. Dr. Mbenga is another example, like, just to name a few.
It's interesting that in 2017 when we saw Discovery, and it looked so different, and the set design, the costumes, everything. And then, as much as Discovery isn't my favorite of the Star Trek shows, I've come to appreciate it. It does feel like the most disconnected from previous Star Trek. With Prodigy, we've got a lot of Voyager. With Picard, a lot of TNG. Lower Decks is basically a TNG comedy. So it's interesting to think that Star Trek started out, at least Alex Kurtzman's era, started out very different, and slowly it's crawled back to not maybe a crutch on these characters, but has definitely landed on them more.
And, I've just had a realization. If I never watched Discovery Season 1 and Discovery Season 2, that show that I was asking about the next thing, would be starting at Discovery Season 3 and Season 4. I feel like if that was the start of Discovery, it would be that show that I wanted, like set complete. I mean, they would have gone really wild going to 32nd Century, but actually that would have
was a
been.
plan for a while. There was a show that was supposed to be that.
Oh, really? So that's great, because what I mean to say is, if you don't even watch season 1 and 2, I think you should watch all of Discovery personally, because there's a lot of stuff with Giorgio and like all that you'd get. But if you just start at season 3, you can have a great time watching the show. Like, if you know about Star Trek but you didn't watch Discovery and you started season 3, I think it could work. And even the people a lot of my friends, I feel like in my circle of friends, I seem to have a lot more traditionalists, Star Trek traditionalists, if you will, or they're just like a little more hard on Star Trek than I am. So even they softened up to Discovery in season 3 and season 4, which I thought was really interesting, because I was like, oh yeah, see, like you kind of like, when you relieve yourself of the burden of how are things, expectations, I should say, of how things should look and how things should be, then you can have a lot more adoption, I feel like, into what you're trying to say.
Yeah, which leads pretty much into like the Klingons from Discovery.
Yes, I was wondering if like, you're going to switch the topics. Yeah,
no, but I mean, part of what alienated a lot of people and almost like extremified some of the fans.
It's wild that
through the ages, it's the Klingons, and I know that you could talk about so many other things. A lot of people like to rely on saying it's the writing, in Discovery, and I am one of the people that kind of complains about like the quality of the writing, especially in those early seasons, or at least like the disconnected nature of how they were delivering these seasons. But like the visual choices that they made, and especially the visual design for the Klingons, is something that like was so jarring to a lot of people. And now it feels like you say, they're kind of bringing it back. Like, are they leaning on legacy characters to help their show, like help their shows progress because they don't know what to do? I don't think so. I think it really is just like fan service. They want to find a way to please everyone, but they're also now kind of like backtracking on their design choices for the Klingons. Like in Discovery Season 2, they decided to change them a bit, and now we hear about like Worf is coming back in TNG, and Terry was having fun saying like Worf will be Worf. Worf will sound like Worf. Worf will look like Worf. Like they're not gonna give him like the Discovery
right
xenomorph skull there.
I've written. I like to write. I've written. I'm an artist of many disciplines. I've written. I've done pictures. I've done film. I've dabbled in a lot of things throughout my life. but I don't know what it's like to be a working writer or anything like that. But what is evident to me in all TV, especially in TV, but maybe in everything, including cinema, and this is like a topic for another Trek chat maybe, is that like I think like blaming writers is like the worst thing you can do, because there's so many layers on top. Like when you're watching a finished work, there's so many layers on top of that written thing. One of the things I used to love to say, and I think you'll probably remember this, Toddy, is that like if you close your eyes and you don't watch Discovery, if you just listen to it, if you're just listening to the writing and everything, there's like very few canon infringements. It's like very canon bendy, but there's very few things that like wouldn't fit with the rest of Star Trek. It's only visually that Discovery is so striking and different from other Star Treks, and that the Klingons are a great focal point, I think, to discuss that, that and what its effect was on people who had a certain expectation of what Star Trek is visually. You know what I mean? So I think that like, that being said, I will say that like something someone told me really resonated with me, and I think this is the perspective I've taken since. Like I was very mad when the Discovery Klingons first get. You can go back and listen to Starfleet Boy, and you can hear Starfleet Boy huff and puff about the Klingons and stuff like that. But something that I was reminded of, it's there, it's evident. You can go watch this. Like it's very hard to deny this. There's very little room for interpretation. But Star Trek is constantly reimagining the look of Star Trek. Like you have the TOS look, and then you have the TOS film era look, and then you have the TNG look era. It spans all the way to Voyager. Enterprise is also reimagining, in a sense, of the look and feel of Star Trek. There's a lot of things that like I remember that was the first time they did a prequel, and that was the first time I had qualms about the visuals. Like I thought, oh, this doesn't fit with like how I imagine this era of Star Trek is, because people had such strong ideas of like what Star Trek should be and so on and so forth. And then Discovery's like a huge leap, because we hadn't really seen sorry, I have to say the 2000, the J.J. Abrams, the Kelvin films are another reimagining of Star Trek. Cleverly done with the story, but also, visually it's completely different from anything we've ever seen. And then Discovery is another reimagining. So I just look at like the only shows that don't kind of reimagine, they're just like they're able to do whatever they want, because they're telling a story that progresses from the last known point that we were in Star Trek, the Nemesis kind of thing, is Lower Decks, Prodigy, and Picard. Those shows, no one complains about the way they look that much. And because they're just following something that they're following after, so you can have advancements and tweaks and stuff like that. So I think that like reimagining Star Trek visually has happened so much in Star Trek that I can't hold it against any of the shows. Like I feel like that's a tradition at this point. It's like whenever you have a new era of Star Trek, you're going to get a reimagining of what Star Trek looks like. And so I know it's like hard to reconcile, because the previous reimaginings, and I like to say this as well, hardly anyone complains about TNG's reimagining of Star Trek anymore, like the Andorians looking different, and all these other like, and the Romulan,
People hate the Andorians from TNG.
No, but hardly, like they hate it, but they hardly complain about it anymore.
Like in one.
It's like a small group. I guarantee you it's a small group of people that complain about it. But also look at the Romulans. Like no one complains about the ridges anymore on the Romulans, because now Picard has officially, as you say, presented a reason on screen as to why there's differences, and like there are TOS Romulans still around.
Well, Strange New Worlds from a leaked picture might be doing the same thing for the Klingons.
Okay, great.
There's a leaked picture of two people standing together.
There's three different kinds of Klingons that are canon that you have to show now.
Yes.
Which is the humanoid-looking Klingons, the very Klingon-looking Klingons, and the Discovery-looking Klingon, like the TNG era, TOS film era Klingons. And like think about that. Just like the Klingon, I think at this point, like with the Klingons, yeah, that would be great if Strange New Worlds just like does the scene that we're all been waiting for, and just like has all three Klingons, maybe another kind, on camera. Like they could bring back the big heads, Sean. They could bring back they could have like you know what I'm talking about, when L'Rell had like this huge thing.
No, I don't want that.
In Picard season 3, maybe Worf massacres the Discovery Klingons.
You know,
Jeez,
I still stand by
Robbie.
my thing, right? Like I had a theory back in like Discovery season 1 where I was like, you know what, these Klingons, they are Klingons from like the outskirts of the Empire. They have like evolved differently, or simply they're like genetically, I guess,
They're
different.
like French
And
Canadians.
and to me, I was like, you know what, these these Klingons, they're so pissed at how like the TOS era Klingons, or like the Enterprise era Klingons handled it with the like the virus and everything, and they feel like these people that are in power are no longer Klingon enough. So I feel like these people, they came from the outskirts, they took over the Empire. This is why it's in disarray. They took over the show, like they took over the whole thing, and they're the ones running it. And I feel like now they could almost transition back into like, you know what, like some Klingons from that have been pushed away that no longer have the ridges, they're coming back. Some more, I'm gonna call them like TNG Klingons, are gonna come back as well, and you could have like a reunion of all of these different types of. That's how I've explained it in my mind. I know that that's not at all what they did, but there is still a way to integrate this into story and to tell it.
You
And you
know,
say,
there's
and
something to say. There's something to say about that. Like these are the Amish. You know, are you familiar with the Amish? Are there groups like that in UK as well as like Quakers
I
and
don't think
Shakers?
there
Do you
are.
all
I
have
don't
that?
think there are
Like
the Amish in like in Europe.
in
I'm
Europe?
not familiar.
So the Amish in the in North American, well, I don't know if they're in Canada, but here in the United States, I should say, the Amish are a group of people who have never let anything beyond agricultural and like light industrial methods come into their society. So they live in like in towns. They have towns that are that where it's all Amish people, where everyone still uses like lantern. There's no electricity, in other words, so everyone still uses like lanterns, and people use horse and carriage. No one watches TV. There's no
Like Star
radio
Trek
in their
Star
world.
Trek Insurrection.
Yes, like the Baku, but no, but the Baku had technology like hidden.
They gave it
The
up.
Amish, yeah, they just gave it up. But like the Amish, they just they have not ever. They don't want to change to this new modern lifestyle. You'll never see an Amish person like doing a cell phone or whatever. Anyways, the movie The Village by M. Night Shyamalan takes place, I think, in one of those types of villages. But where I was taking this is that like these Klingons that we see in Discovery, 100% I feel like could be like that. Like they are probably they were once the Amish of the Klingons, but when they saw that like the Klingon Empire was kind of like mixing and in disarray and like not, like that's when they took their opportunity. So like I kind of like that, like, and it also fits with what we've seen in TNG when Worf was kind of, and I hate to call I, de-evolving. I hate to say that the Klingons from Discovery are not as evolved, but just their evolution didn't go in the same direction as the other
Yeah.
Klingons. They, you know what I mean, because they kept it so like insular or whatever. So it makes sense because Worf kind of goes back into this like crustacean form in the most extreme version of his transformation in TNG in that episode. And these, we've always said they have like a crustaceous, like amphibious type of look to them, you know what I mean? So I think that actually kind of is a cool way to explain the Discovery era Klingons, Sean
If you're going to
and Robbie.
do a reimagining of a Star Trek character, Star Trek makeup, just make it look good, because Worf
Yeah, but
looks,
that's like
Worf.
subjective, right?
I know, I suppose, but Worf looks so fantastic in TNG. And no, especially in Deep Space Nine and First Contact, he looks so brilliant. The makeup's top notch, the prosthetics, and I think what's so exciting, and I suppose it's probably played out in a good way, the fact that Discovery was so different and it looked so different, and now we've kind of built up to bringing back these characters in a more familiar look, and it's probably played out well for us fans because we're like, oh, this doesn't look right, and then it's become more familiar as we've went along until we built up to shows like Lower Decks and a whole TNG reunion and the Stargazer set, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. But I think that it's great to see canon connections in Strange New Worlds with the ANR coming back. You know, that's using canon in a good way. But sometimes you can go too far, because I've listened to a lot of podcasts where they're covering Star Trek Enterprise, and they're like, we really didn't need to know why the Klingons lost their ridges in TOS, but other people really like it. So it's kind of difficult to thread that line, and I hope that they just don't go too far with characters like, sorry, what's her name, Noonien Singh. That I'm trying to think of a character's name in Strange New Worlds.
Ta'an. No, not Ta'an.
Leon.
Leon. I was thinking of Dr. Ta'ana from Leon Noonien Singh. Yeah,
which is going to be interesting, because when Strange New Worlds comes around the corner, we'll be able to watch it and critique it and say, is this going too far? You know, will Lan, will they delve into like her genetically enhanced stuff too much? But I think it is better to.
Is she even genetically enhanced?
Yeah,
like,
is she?
We don't even know.
I do think it's better to go all out with canon sometimes than not at all. And I think that if New Eden is an example of what Strange New Worlds will be like, but even better, then it's pretty hopeful, you know, because New Eden is one of the best episodes of Discovery for me, and I think Akiva Goldsman made a pretty great TOS story. So if he has that passion, and Henry Alonso Myers, who's also, I think he's showrunner, has that passion, which they seem to, as well as all the actors who have been posting so much love for the show, Anson Mount specifically, then it is very exciting, because it just becomes a love project, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, and I feel like we saw a hint of how much passion these guys are pouring into it. Sean, do you think that when we were at Mission Chicago, we didn't get to see Sonequa Martin Green, but it was neat to see, like, they call the actor troops, they like to the cast of each show, they usually like to call the captain, whoever plays the lead on the show, like it's like kind of like the captain of the crew, right? And so everyone on Discovery kind of says that Sonequa Martin Green sets the tone, and you can kind of see the tone of each panel with each lead. And I thought it was cool to see the Anson Mount tone. It's very fun, but it's also very like gracious, and like,
it's
I don't
very
know,
much. It's very mature, isn't it?
It is a very mature panel.
Yeah.
It was very different from we didn't have Carol Freeman, but we had Tawny Newsome. So I consider her the lead on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On that cast. And so we saw each different kind of like cast and how they, like, you know.
Although it's bizarre, in a strange way, I think Lower Decks is the only show where it's not the captain that leads. It's like Mike McMahon that sets the tone for it.
Yeah,
it really is the creator that, like, he's sitting there.
And
but they all have very good chemistry. But no, I see what you mean. And
but like Janeway, like, for example, like like Kate Mulgrew, you could tell her panel, like her crew, they all like
she sets the tone for Star Trek.
Sorry, Robbie, are we giving you FOMO with all?
No, I love this talk.
No, to bounce off what you're talking about with like Anson Mount, I forget what this is, but one of the first quotes that I was like reading from Anson Mount when he got the part, like back in Discovery days, was that he felt like, considering Captain Christopher Pike was the first captain that Gene Roddenberry ever created for Star Trek and Starfleet and the Federation, he feels like Gene Roddenberry wrote this captain, to represent all of the values of Star Trek, all of the values of Starfleet and the Federation, and that is how Anson Mount is playing Pike.
That's why
him to represent.
That's why I fell in love with him in season 2,
and that's why he's the Captain America of like
Star Trek. We've said that before, right? Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
and so
Captain Federation, we were calling him Captain Federation.
Captain Starfleet, I don't know.
Captain Federation was what we were calling him, if I'm not mistaken.
If Anson Mount is bringing like that kind of like, I guess, perspective and those values to the character, but also like he's gonna bring them on set, right? He's going to bring them with his person, and he's like, I don't think I'm mistaken in saying that he is a very great, adorable person that has like upholds all of those values in real life anyway. So like I feel like if he brings that to the set, we're definitely going to have some sort of like cohesive, I think, very Starfleet, very Federation vibe going on the show. Because all of these actors, even though they're not the ones writing the show, I'm pretty sure all of their performances very much inform the way that their characters are going to be written over the years. That happened on Deep Space Nine, that happened on TNG. So
See,
yeah, I'm happy about it.
I think Captain Pike is in no danger of being overshadowed by Captain Kirk as long as Anson Mount is playing Captain Pike, because I think that's, you just kind of like,
It's just the news. I guess you guys are right.
Yeah.
It's just the news, how it came a little early,
Yeah.
and how like
Yeah.
same thing for Picard. You're sitting here thinking, I'm not the biggest fan of this season of Picard, but like even if I were a fan of it, I'd kind of be like, yeah, it's not that I don't care, but it's like just release season 3, and then maybe I'll go back and watch this as like a prequel to it.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm not. To me, what it is it's like it kind
but
of.
I feel bad for the characters. I feel bad for the actors and the characters that didn't really get the time to shine right in these 2 seasons.
And it kind of makes it transparent to me, like the announcement of season 3 and the way they're setting it up. Like some of the things that we, not to go too deep into Picard off of our topic here, because we haven't talked about carpets yet, but
well, we don't need to mention too much about carpets. We can give some context about that.
Context about that too, but as far as Picard is concerned, like it kind of made me think like, oh, okay, so it looks like they're going to either sideline these characters that now I've fallen in love with, or the way it looks based on the most recent episode, I don't know if you've seen it, Sean, is like, I think that certain characters, their fate is sealed now. Like I kind of like know what's going to happen, but I know that because it's like, oh yeah, and I didn't want to be thinking that way. Like I wanted to kind of be surprised a lot more and stuff, so it is a little bit like it kind of takes the wind out of the season a little bit. But that being said, the cool thing about modern TV and streaming in general is that like right after the show finishes, I'm just going to binge through it and I'll see it from a different perspective. You know what I'm saying? Like I always watch Star Trek. Not everyone should do this. It's a lot of time, involved in this, but I always watch Star Trek 2 ways. Like I formulate a week by week opinion as it's been airing. And then I go back when it's finished and then I watch the whole series, like, and see how it like feels. And I wish there was a way to just cut the credits and opening credits out and just like have it, and no previously ons, and just have it play.
Find a way to download them and do like a super edit.
I guess, yeah, you could do a super cut or whatever, but I think like that's something they could program into their platform very easily. But anyways, it's fun to watch it like that because
they should have a random Star Trek episode button too.
Because you're not as like focused on all the cliffhangers. Like that's the only thing that's been kind of like, and The Expanse does it really well, but it also used to annoy me is like when The Expanse was bingeable, I could choose, okay, I'm gonna stop here, this cliffhanger is not as bad as the other ones, like I can wait like till tomorrow or the day after, right? But when you're forced to wait, like some cliffhangers you're like, oh my god, like I don't want to wait, like I want to see what happens next. And then other cliffhangers you're like, yeah, I could it's okay,
I'm hoping
like,
Strange New Worlds doesn't have that. I'm hoping
I don't think it will. My impression is that you'll get a nice
episodes.
little. I think you're gonna get like a nice little wrap up on every episode. Maybe you'll get a couple of 2-parters though, because TOS established that. So yeah, it's like.
Before we jump into carpets, I did want to say something about Strange New Worlds and the Cage. The Cage, like the episode, The Cage is technically an episode of Strange New Worlds, right? Like it's an episode of TOS, fine, but it's technically an episode. So do we think that like Strange New Worlds will span from before and after the events of The Cage? Or do we think that like The Cage is still an episode that will happen after the end of the run of Strange New Worlds?
The Cage takes place actually before Discovery. Yeah, it's so what Discovery. You're thinking of the Menagerie.
Oh no, okay, so
yeah. So the Cage.
Sorry, yeah, I'm talking of the Menagerie.
Because in Discovery season 2 we referenced The Cage. Remember in the episode?
That's right. So The Cage is way before Discovery.
The Cage takes place before, so it's before Captain Pike is sent on his sidelined. Yeah,
I got my dates confused. So basically, all of the performances in The Cage would inform the performances that are going to be happening in Strange New Worlds.
Right, and we already have so we already see that Pike, he's in a really good, so Pike is in a really bad place in the cage, like he's in a very like kind of depressed
Yeah, because
state.
he's having his
And
therapy
then
sessions.
between the cage and season 2 of Discovery, he's in a really good place. He's kind of gotten over all that, and like we get a different Pike from the one we saw in the cage, but it makes sense because there's maybe 5-6 years, but that was 5 or 6 years before season 2 of Discovery, and now we're getting a post Discovery Pike who's lost Admiral Cornwall, who's lost Non, who's lost, so it's an interesting different, it's going to be in a way, I think we're going to return to slightly the tone maybe in the first episode of the cage, but I think he'll go back to being the Pike that we love and know and want in season 2, as we called him, Captain Federation.
Pike gives me Christopher Reeve Superman Boy Scout vibes.
Yes.
He has that energy, doesn't he, where he just lifts up a room, and all of his performances, like more so than Kirk to me. And Kirk is different in his own right, where he's not as like optimistic and Captain America, like you were saying.
No, he's not. He's a bit different.
Yeah, Kirk has demons. Kirk is a different but Kirk,
he's more of a John Wayne kind of,
I would say he's optimistic, but he's very much a like, I think of Pike as like a visionary, like he's very like thought, like kind of like a thinking captain, if you will, and Kirk's more of like Pike definitely loves the action as well, but I feel like Kirk's more of like an action captain.
Act
like
before you think. Is that it?
Yeah, act and then think. Like, yeah, ask for forgiveness later type of thing. It's a different style. What I would love to see in Strange New Worlds at some point in its run, if they're going to go back in time and recall things of the past, I would love to see the first appearance of Robert April outside of the animated series, like the first live action appearance of Captain Robert April, because he's kind of like, it's something that's interesting. A lot of people don't realize how old the Enterprise actually is by the time Kirk gets her. I think she's like a good 15 years old or something like that. You know what I mean? So, I mean, maybe not that old. Maybe she's like 10 years old. So she's had a few captains before. And Robert April is technically the first captain of the Enterprise.
They have ships in the Federation and Starfleet that go on for like 80 years.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
Did you see things
and
like
shuttlecrafts last like hundreds of years.
They never replace that shit. Once you build it, just keep it.
So no, that's just like something that I think would be nice, a nice bit of addition to it would complete the I think it would complete the Enterprise Constitution class captain journey,
arc, the journey
arc.
there?
Yeah, the captain arc, the Enterprise arc, because the Enterprise has an arc if you think about it as well. So
would you
carpet arc?
Would you be do you think I have two questions. Would you be opposed to seeing characters like Bones and Scotty appear briefly in the show? Is my first question. Sorry. And then my second question is, do you think you'd like to see the Enterprise slowly become more like it was in TOS, if that's even possible in today's day and age, where they are so opposed to that kind of look?
I would absolutely like, if I were show running the show, I would basically transition all of the visuals from the Discovery like look and feel to the TOS look and feel. Like that's how I would do it. I would transition it to that look. And not as so much as like a Star Trek Continues kind of vibe. Like I wouldn't want it to become exactly like, but I think like what they've done with the turbo lift is fine. Like what they've done with the props in the famous trio there. They've got the phaser, the tricorder, and the communicator. They look stunning in my opinion. So I would definitely want them to do that with the ship. When it comes to Scotty and like Bones and stuff, I don't necessarily want to see them on the show. I wouldn't feel the need to that. I'm not opposed to having them on the show. I'm also not opposed to having like CG doubles or digitally remastering, actors or like recreating performances. I'm not opposed to that. I know that a lot of people are getting maybe a little fed up with that, but I'm fine, especially if it's just for like a very brief appearance. If there's like a moment where Scotty's walking on and he's walking off and he's just doing something, like you can take his son, you know what I mean, and then you can do some trickery. I'm fine with that. If you're actually casting a character like they did for Pike, then it makes sense to go with an actual new actor.
I assume like in TNG we had a lot of episodes where people took like a shuttle somewhere and it was a side event, like Picard on Risa. You hardly had any of the Enterprise crew on it or anything like that. If you came up with a reason, like maybe I forget which Dax is around at this time, but she definitely on the in the books,
it's I know
it's Emily Dax, I think, or someone like that.
It's
who
the
meets...
the nervous kind of nerdy one. I know because I just read a book about it.
And then also it's mentioned, I think, that maybe it's mentioned on DS9. But anyways, that Dax meets McCoy. So if there's like a side journey where like Ortega has to shuttle Dax to like a medical conference or something like that, and in that medical conference episode, it's like funny because Ortega is trying to like find something to do while these doctors are having their conference. But if we follow the Dax character, who's a guest star for a little while, and she meets McCoy, like that could be a totally awesome way to get a younger McCoy in there, and like also to kind of like canonically, like make canonical something that the fans love.
I would enjoy like a more subtle approach to that, where like you don't even have McCoy as a character speaking on screen. You just like have McCoy as the speaker on stage.
Oh yeah, that could be.
So you have like Bones. You can have like Bones.
But they had
in the distance speaking on stage. You know what I mean? So you can digitally remaster and do some work, but considering it's kind of like not necessarily in the background.
Well,
but
DeForest Kelly's not even here anymore, so it could just be a recast. Or it'd be fun if Carl Urban could be like, no, but he's too busy. He's too big now. No, that's too confusing. I agree with you. But like, there's plenty of folks that I'm sure could play a good young McCoy. But my point is, you're right. It could be that approach could work as well. But I guess what I mean to say, Robbie, is like you asked if you mind if it would be like in a very kind of like light or sparing way. No, I don't think I mind. But again, those are characters that have we already have a lot about them. I'd rather see like, for example, we haven't talked about Kyle, but like, there's this new Kyle character. There's this character named Kyle who's aboard the Enterprise on the Strange New Worlds, but he's played by, I believe, an Asian actor. And so people are wondering like, what's the deal? Like, is that the same Kyle that we get later in TOS, So I would like to see characters like that. And my theory, Father like this as well, is my theory is that could be Kyle's like husband, the one we saw in TOS. This is his husband that we're seeing in Strange New Worlds. So they're a married couple, and he took his name. So there's all kinds of explanations and things like that you could do. But yeah, either way, like I do want to see like more. I want to see more of minor characters. But I wouldn't mind a sprinkling here and there of like a Scotty story or a Bones. Just like a mention could be fine as well. As a matter of fact,
we'll get mentions.
Yeah,
every show is going to mention every other. Like, yeah.
And then the other part of your question, can you remind me what it was?
It was just whether you'd want to see the Enterprise become more like it is in line with TOS.
Oh yeah, thank you. I don't need to see it on screen necessarily, but I think John Eves or someone, I forget who it was who said it. I heard it on Text Trek, I think, but they said like the designer of the new Enterprise, I think John Eves said that like, oh, there's going to be another refit, and then you get the TOS refit. So that's fine with me too, because I guess it's just like I've always known that the starships have. Like I read a lot of technical manuals when I was younger. So one of the things they say and this is the beauty of like these like references and things like that, is they take what you see on screen and you try to explain it in a reasonable way. And so there's different ways that these things are like shown on screen, but like, because there's so many different bridges, like every new director wanted to redesign the bridge, or every new like onto like you have like, especially in the movies, like the bridge of the Enterprise changes like from movie to movie. They said in the technical manuals that all of the starships in the Federation have that they're all components. You could take the nacelles off and pop a new set of nacelles on that are more advanced. You could take the struts
The
and
model kits.
yeah, they're model kits, like literally in space. So they're always popping a new bridge on or this and that. So that's why that's something and then it's canonical because in Star Trek Beyond, you actually see the Enterprise in a very like fast clip, where they're showing it being built. You see the bridge module being like dropped onto it. So like Star Trek Beyond made it visually, like made it canonical visually.
So Star Trek Beyond, they're like duct taping ships together.
Yeah, they've
got Velcro.
It's Velcro. It's Velcro. It's exactly Mestral invented it. But my point with all that was that that like I don't need to. So my point with all that, Robbie, was that I don't need to see the refit happen. I already know it's already like in my mind. It's like, yeah, I could see like how you could go from one ship to the other, from one series to the other. It's not a big deal to me.
Well, there you go. You have both opinions because this stems from your whole concept of like Star Trek as a podcast. If you listen to it, it makes sense. Whereas I come from like an angle where I think that the visuals in Star Trek are just as important as the story, and they are part of what made Star Trek such a long-lasting story and product. Like I think that the visuals of Star Trek are just as important as the stories because they're really what helped it become such like an important part of pop culture, an important part of like our story as humans, I guess. So I think it's
important. But to be fair, you're not an extremist on that, because if you were, then you would reject anything that didn't look like, like it could lead right up to TOS. But I think
because I have a brain, right? And I understand there are also there are creative limitations too.
That's what I'm trying to say though, is like that kind of like that it's very subjective, but it's also, there's like a line, right? Like you're kind of like for example, the way Strange New Worlds look, if I'm not mistaken, is more widely received because there's so many like direct connections in the visual style to TOS, even though they're way updated. Yeah, it's colored correctly at least, yeah, and things like that. Exactly.
Yeah. Except Sec B.
Come on.
and engineering, I think. Which leads us to the final thing. Let's add some context to carpets here. The reason why we're talking about Kirk carpets and Klingons is because in the
but we did
Star Trek
Klingons
Picard,
and carpets. We did it the other way.
Okay, fair enough.
That's fine.
In Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 1, we see a ship called the USS Stargazer. I'm assuming it's maybe the Stargazer A or Stargazer B. No, it's not. It's just the USS Star. It's a new one.
I think they're calling it the Sagan class.
Okay.
And so what they were trying to say is that like a ship's, just like how like the Enterprise B
its design philosophy was like reintroduced, I guess, in the newer fleet.
Yeah, so
that's not very important anyway.
Yeah, so I would call it Stargazer. Even you probably can't write it on there, but it's Stargazer 2.
Stargazer
right?
2. Oh, yeah. Stargazer. Right? Okay.
I don't know. Like
it's the Stargazer again.
Anyway,
the thing is, it was a Federation. It was a Starfleet ship. It's looking fancy. It's looking very like high end and high production value in terms of like from a real world perspective and in terms of like it being a set. But then it's also a beautiful ship in universe. Of course,
I can't wait to get that model.
It didn't have carpets in the hallways, and so the internet had a freak out. What's his name? Dave Blass, I think.
Dave Blass, who's the lead.
Got absolutely bombarded with like Twitter hot takes about the fact that there was no carpet in the hallways.
Welcome to Twitter, Mr. Blass.
Yeah,
welcome to Star Trek Twitter.
I don't know if there's that much to talk about like this, apart from like if you guys liked whether or not there was a carpet. I think the reason why it's funny to say like Kirk, carpet, and Klingons is because it all kind of leads to the same thing, right? It leads to like Star Trek recasting or reusing like characters that have already existed, remodeling or reimagining like visuals. So it's all part of the same like theme, I think.
I think people probably wouldn't have been as against having no carpet if it wasn't such shiny floor, you know?
Yes,
It's the same with
I
Strange
agree.
New Worlds. Just put down, I think carpet, I'm not sure if carpet would suit Stargazer because it's so it's so metallic and it's so shiny, just as a set, like the walls and everything, and it's so grey. I don't know if a carpet would actually fit into that kind of set, but I think carpet does really suit TNG, and especially the Define. It gives it such a cozy, not hotel feel, but luxury kind of liner feel.
Yeah.
Whereas I honestly can't see a carpet in modern Star Trek, and I don't know if that's because we haven't seen one with that kind of design aesthetic. But I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think it's just the incredibly shiny floor is distracting to me, and I would prefer like a matte finish. And I think it would make the whole set less distracting and look a lot cleaner and nicer.
I agree. Much like with Discovery, how the problem with the Klingons was not that they were bald, because everyone freaked out about Klingons not having hair. Klingons have had no hair before. They're allowed to be bald. Like we have bald humans, we can have bald Klingons. It makes sense. Yeah, the problem with the Klingons was like the elongated skulls and the giant claws, and how they were in essence a different species. I think that the problem with like the Stargazer was not the fact that it had no carpets. I think it's like just the inherent. They have a gloss. Like all of these new designs and these new sets that they do, they have like a very glossy finish, and they almost feel like, I don't know, like maybe they're overshining all of these ships. They're making them too pretty. And I get that you want to wow audiences, and it's also great for the actors. Like you get on set and it's like, oh my god, it's amazing. But it feels almost too shiny, too glossy, too over the top. So I think that's where my problem came in.
I think the shiny surfaces are a little bit of a cheat from a technical standpoint because the reflections kind of make the spaces look bigger than they actually are. So I think that's probably one of the reason. I'm just
They don't
guessing
need to be big though. It's a
why it
starship.
works.
They need to
No,
be
but like,
physically big so you can put the big camera rigs and the big cameras in. That's
of
okay.
course, but like, I just mean to say, like, I think that's probably a reason. I'm just guessing. I don't know if
Hmm.
that's true or not. But as far as carpets and flooring go, I never really know. I feel like I don't get distracted by lens flares. I don't get distracted by a lot of things. So I think to me, I'm probably less annoyed
That's
by
right.
the shininess of everything. Um,
Carpets
and
impede lens flares. That's right. That's the thing in it.
that's true. There's no lens flares if you got carpets, man. Like, it's true. But I mean, we all have things that we that annoy us and that we nitpick about. That being said, like the carpet aesthetic, I think used to be better when they recorded most of the sound on set, right? Like now, most everything's ADR, right? Like pretty much everyone re-records their lines or whatever in ADR, and so I think that's why they don't worry about it as much. But I did see like behind the scenes stuff from both the Orville and Star Trek where they do occasionally lay down a rug. You don't see it on screen, but it does probably dampen the echoiness or whatever, when they are probably recording on set. They do figure out ways to do it. That being said, I'm okay with the Stargazer not having carpets because she's the next kind of design standard, and so it's okay. We could leave the carpets in the 24th
Yeah,
century.
that is
Like,
the difference. That is the difference
right?
where like the Enterprise is the ship like the TOS Enterprise is a ship we've already seen.
Yeah,
It's existing in a space and in a time where we've already seen it on screen, whereas the Stargazer is completely new. Do
yeah,
whatever the hell you want with it.
yeah. And then as far as the Enterprise in Strange New Worlds goes, like having seen these like production stills and stuff like that at Mission Chicago, I actually see how much they really are very similar to the interiors. But they do look very, you know it does. To me, it crosses the line into reimagining because I can't see like why you would want to go to a TOS look after you've been on the Enterprise in Strange New Worlds. Like, why on earth would you want to like put carpet on the floor when you have these beautiful shiny floors and you have these like cool corridors with like all this tech on them, and then you go to these like corridors that are mostly just like they look like office hallways, like I really love TOS, but I'm not married to the aesthetic of TOS because to me, it's not that it looks cheap. but it doesn't look futuristic anymore. Does that make any sense? Like, it looks like I'm watching something in the 60s.
You have to visualize
you
it
know,
differently, though. You have to take it
yeah.
like Enterprise had flat screens, because when they're looking at a screen, they're looking at just a 2D image. Whereas, like TOS, they have like these big bulky screens, but that's because they're looking at like
At a
a
3D
3D
image.
holographic rendering.
Yeah. Right.
That you can like change the perspective on, like that you
Yeah,
have to.
that's a
But then
good
you have to
point.
kind of like, you know, I can't come up with something for carpets. You can't tell me that like, oh, they're less in danger because like now they've got carpet so on the
I think that like
in
it's
the
probably
hallway.
again, going back to the component idea, it might be really easy to change these things, you know, in the future. So like one captain could be like, "Oh, you know what? I think I want carpets," and then another captain
Oh,
could be
like
like,
how the U.S. president changes his
"Yeah,
office.
exactly, same exact deal." You know, like, and in the future in
Pike be like,
Discovery
no
era,
holograms,
yeah,
carpet.
and carpet, yeah, you know, like I feel like that could be a thing.
Rios
You know,
has a cigar, so he didn't want carpets.
in 32nd century, it's probably so much easier. You could literally just say computer change desktop to Sohail Alpha, and then the whole ship turns into a different, you know, configuration like instantly because everything's programmable matter, you know, which is kind of
Computer,
cool.
paint the ship pink.
Yeah, I would actually love a pink starship. No, I'm just kidding.
You know, I think one thing I love about TOS is the colored spotlights. You know, the kind of in the hallways and in the grills on the bridge. And I wish that they'd had that in A Strange New Worlds
I
bridge.
agree with that. Yeah.
See, that would
I
be
think we're
very
gonna get
interesting.
there.
They could get that. They could very interestingly, like, slowly integrate that into like, oh, they put an upgrade on like whoever's post, you know, on the bridge, and then you look at it, and it's like this weird ass grill with like a green light flowing out of it, right? They could do that.
There's an image floating around, a new one of Spock, of Ethan Peck playing Spock on like a very it's either
Yeah.
like a red alert mode, but or a night mode perhaps or whatever. And I'm in love with the way I want my room to be fashioned in that manner with the amber readouts and like the reds and the, you know, like the warm tones of it. And
the bridge has gone back to like it's they've left the blue behind.
Yeah, like if you don't like, to me that looks like a nice, like a really good update to the aesthetic that was established in TOS.
It's amazing the difference that the warmth of the orange tones bring. And instead of like the blue on the screens and the blue kind of filter the Enterprise bridge had on Discovery. But I suppose Discovery kind of, that show seems to have like a blue obsession.
Yes,
like blue filter.
We talked about this ad infinitum when season one. Remember how much we were always like,
they've
why
kind of
can't
let
they
it go?
just?
They've kind of gone to like a more grayish now. But
yeah,
like,
Toddy and I would
still
complain like every week about the blue. We would just like, there's so much blue. Well, I don't know why we were so focused on the blue, but we were. But yeah, you're right.
Note, I think we'll end this. Oh, you had a final thing to say?
No, I was just saying, Ravi's right. The amber tones to me on the bridge,
it's warmer.
just like, it's nice.
It's more welcoming. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys so much for talking about Klingons, carpets, and Kirk, or a lot of Pike actually, for over an hour with me. This was great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. You can find these fine gentlemen on Twitter, on YouTube, Starfleet Boy, EarlGrayTrekkie. They've got links. I'll put the links in the description as usual.
Thank you.
Have you guys got some final thoughts to share about any of this?
Just that this is, as always for me, one of the most fun things out there. So I hope more people will tune into your podcast, and I hope you'll have me back on another time.
We must.
I'm just so glad I had this Sunday off to talk with you both, because I could have talked about, you know, Star Trek for 2 hours with you. You know, it's been a joy. It really is a joy to be a part of this community. And it's uplifting. It really is.
Well, thank you. It's a joy to have you in this community. And thank you, everyone, for listening and for being a part of this community as well. I don't say this often, but if you have any feedback, comments, if you want to send me an email, you can do that, trekonthetube@gmail.com. I'm told by some people that I should sometimes say this, because maybe some of you guys listen and aren't aware that I have a YouTube channel, or maybe you don't care about the YouTube channel, and that's fine. So if you just care about the podcast, send me an email, and I'll reply. All right?
There's many different ways to connect to you.
There is. There's many different ways. And Twitter, you can DM me on Twitter. I usually reply.
He says his DMs are open, but I don't know if that's true.
I hope they are.
I don't think they are.
They should.
Anyways,
Heroin frequency's open.
If they're not, send a
I like
DM
that.
to Starfleet Boy, and he'll tell me.
Jeez.
We'll find a way. On that note, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Live long and prosper.